It's that time of the week. Opening up the Peacock and Williamson mailbag prior to week 14. We've got defensive linemen entering lineups. We've got defensive linemen exiting lineups. What to make of some teams in the middle of the conversation for playoffs, and what to make about some second-tier quarterbacks as well this NFL season. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock here alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love all the everydayers out there subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Skylight Digital Picture Frame. More on that momentarily as we open up the mailbag here, Matt, and a lot to get into. A quick little bit of news, though, before we get going, and a big blow to the defensive line of the Detroit Lions and maybe a boon to the defense of the Buffalo Bills. Von Miller looking like he's going to be ready to go for those Buffalo Bills as the 6-6 Bills try to make a run here and get back into the playoff picture. And Aleem McNeil, who's been kind of a player that doesn't get a lot of press, but has been awesome for the Detroit Lions on their defensive line. And that defense needs help, right? And he's going to be out, it looks like, now for Detroit.
So let's start with McNeil. The Lions defense has really been trending the wrong way the last month, 6 weeks, something along those lines. Started out as a strength. Now it kind of feels like they're holding on for dear life. And he's not a player that's talked about a lot, but he was a day 2 pick as a athletic nose, a really good tester, great example of a, quote, project that just kept getting better and better and better. And I don't want to say he's an elite defensive tackle, but he's probably a tier 2 guy now. I mean, he's better than most might realize. So I think that's a big blow. And then Von Miller, he's got some off the field stuff going on. He's had some injuries. He's up in age, and the Bills are at desperation time. It's good for him, good that he's coming back. I think it's worth noting that he can play this week. But frankly, they just need more from him. I mean, he has not paid off on their investment, especially this year.
Staying on the Buffalo Bills, that's been a topic of conversation. Yesterday, we had Mike Renner in your seat, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Broke down. Yeah, appreciate it, Mike. And you guys got to go check out that episode. It's a lot of fun. And he's doing Renner Ranks every day here now on the Locked On Podcast Network. And he kind of did his own little Renner Ranks for us. And he was breaking down the AFC and NFC teams he'd least want to face. That's how he was power ranking them. And similarly, how you talked about the Bills earlier last week, I believe it was, Matt, that Buffalo Bills are kind of that team that is better than their record that you don't really want to face. But right now, they might not even be a team that makes the playoffs. But if they make the playoffs, you don't want to face them, right? And Renner looked at that team similarly. And we have a question here from Dave that says, do the Bills have the biggest gap between their floor and ceiling that you've ever known a team to have? Because clearly, I think they have that this year, like almost historic levels of a gap between their ceiling and their floor right now, Matt. They're plus 100 point differential right now for a team that's only 500. They're 6-6. Team like the team, the best record in the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles, their point differential, I think, is plus 40 points right now.
So I think it was last week about this time we did an episode, who can win the Super Bowl? And a lot of people tweeted me they got a kick out of, I think I said something along the lines of, I think the Bills can win the Super Bowl. I just don't know if they can make the playoffs. And that sums them up well. So I think that in itself is a large gap from floor, picking in the top 20 outside the playoffs, to ceiling, picking 32 and Super Bowl champ. But all in all, I mean, is their floor really crazy low? I don't know. I'm sure there's many examples. The Vikings last year, their floor was low. Like, they weren't great, but their ceiling was winning the division, 13-win team. You know what I mean? Like, there are other instances of a bigger gap, because I do think the Bills' worst day is still pretty good.
That's a good point. They're kind of at their floor, which is a 500 team, and
their record is their floor.
Yeah, exactly. And and I think the question is about a healthy team too, because it's like, if you took if Patrick Mahomes got injured, what's the Chiefs' floor? It's probably a sub 500 team, right? Because there's there's some good happening in Kansas City, obviously, but most of these teams or a lot of teams in the NFL are pretty quarterback centric. You look at a team like the Cincinnati Bengals, what their floor and their ceiling is. They're actually not at their floor right now. And Jake Browning played pretty good on Monday Night Football. We didn't have a chance to talk about them very much. And they're 6-6 as well. Can they, are they still in this thing? The Cincinnati Bengals, the Jacksonville Jaguars now, and it's looking like confirmed high ankle sprain for Trevor Lawrence at 8-4. They've got two teams nipping on their heels in the Colts and the Texans that are only one game behind them. Like, this could get really interesting in the AFC. If Trevor Lawrence, and usually this is a 4 to 6 week thing with the high ankle sprain, if Trevor Lawrence is out for a month and he's not back until you make the playoffs, CJ Beathard's got to get you there. They've already got 8 wins. That should be close to enough, but there's a chance they don't win another game in the regular season for the last 5 weeks if Trevor Lawrence is out. 8-9 doesn't get you in the playoffs in the AFC. Would you the Bills stock and the Bengals stock at 6-6 over the Jacksonville Jaguars stock if you knew that Trevor Lawrence wasn't going to be there the rest of the year?
Yeah, it's a great conversation, especially because Bengals just played Jags, and the Jags might have to go down the non-franchise quarterback road now, unfortunately. And they also lost Christian Kirk, which isn't a small thing. It looks like he's going to be out quite a while.
Speaking of floor versus ceiling, the Jags with CJ Beathard, that's a deeper floor than the Bengals are at right now, which we just saw on Monday Night Football, and the Bills for sure.
Like, I don't think the Jags with CJ Beathard could go into Cincy on a Monday night, Thursday night, and beat a Burrow-led Bengals. Like the Bengals just did to the Jags.
Browning, so they're definitely not beating Burrow.
right. And
that was with Trevor Lawrence healthy most of the game.
Exactly. So this kind of strays from the original tweet. I mean, because any of these teams that lose quarterbacks, as you mentioned, Mahomes, et cetera, their floor and ceiling become light years apart. Skyscrapers apart in terms of floors and ceilings. But this is an interesting conversation because no one saw that Bengals win coming. I tend to think they're still out of it, but that's a huge win because it is an AFC win. They're really short on AFC wins. The rest of their schedule is really difficult. My hunch, and I don't know this at all, we're recording this middle of the day Wednesday, is Lawrence hobbles around for the next couple of weeks, maybe only misses 1 or 2, isn't his same, gets a shot, spats that thing up like crazy, ends out there slinging it, and they win a game or 2. But without him, they're not even a playoff contender to me. I don't think they can hold on without him.
How many games do the Jaguars have to win? They're 8-4 right now. So 8 wins is not enough. They need 2 more wins.
10 unless Houston. What's nice about them is they're in first place in their division. To get a wild card, I don't think there'll be any 9-win wild card teams. But maybe Houston falls on their face somehow and doesn't, they lost Tank Dell. Maybe you can hold on and win your division. But 9's not going to cut it. I mean, no one in the AFC with 9's getting in. And there's some 10-win team won't.
There's a chance that 10 doesn't win their division either because the Texans and Colts could win 3 more games. Looking at the schedule right now for Jacksonville, they're already done with their Texans and Colts portion of their schedule. So they're all very tight as far as conference record goes as well. For that tiebreaker, I believe division tiebreaker is division record. Let me see what division
it
record
is first.
So,
I don't remember what they did.
So Jaguars are 4-1 in the division, so that helps them because they already got that lead. Texans are only 1-2 in the division right now, so that's a big one for winning the division, which might come down to it could be only the division winner and that's it, right, in the playoffs. Yeah. So the Jaguars, they've got Browns, who are in a similar
in
spot
Cleveland.
At Cleveland, which is a good defense, and
their defense is crazy at home,
and a replacement quarterback, right? So that's a tough one. If CJ Beathard's playing in that game, they're not going to be favored at Cleveland.
They're a dog in that game,
right.
With Beathard.
At home against the Ravens,
might be a dog no matter what.
With Trevor Lawrence in that game, and so you can't even really begin to think that Trevor Lawrence is going to be near 100% until maybe at Buccaneers. Then you got Panthers, thankfully, on the schedule at home. So that's going to be a W and potentially with a CJ Beathard W, right? And then finishing the season at the Tennessee Titans. So that's...
I think 0-2 is pretty confident until we get to week 16.
Yes. So now you have to win 2 more. Panthers, very good chance you're going to be able to win that football game.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to win, and hopefully both of at Buccaneers in week 16 and at Tennessee Titans on the road in both of those in week 18.
Meanwhile, Houston and Indy, I mean, I know they're behind, but Houston at Jets, at Tennessee, Browns at home, Titans at home, at Indy. That isn't bad. I mean, that's a potential for a sweep. Indy goes to Cincy, hosts the Steelers, at Atlanta, Vegas, Houston. There's a little tougher, but neither one has a murderer's row. They're going to catch up to the Jags a little, I bet, in these next couple of weeks.
Dude, week 18.
That's looming pretty big.
You got Texans, Colts, and then the Titans and the Jaguars. This is going to come down to week 18 for these teams and figuring out what this playoff outlook is. So, next, Matt, we've got quarterback injuries. Why so many? And we're going to rank some quarterbacks as well coming up on this episode of Peacock and Williamson. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Skylight, the Skylight digital picture frame. And what makes the picture frame so awesome to me from Skylight is that it's the perfect gift for a holiday season for someone in your family, especially if you are maybe a new parent, right? And those grandparents are going to want pictures of their grandchildren. So no matter how technically savvy those grandparents of the new grandchild might be, the Skylight picture frame is a perfect fit this holiday season. It looks beautiful in your home. The photos are displayed in HD resolution. It's got a touch screen so you can swipe if you want to see a different photo. And you can set it up for your loved ones in their house and control it with your app, and they don't have to do anything. You just keep uploading pictures of the cute new baby, and they're popping up for grandma and grandpa. Larger 15-inch frame can be wall mounted as well. There's color options: black, white, silver, limited edition poppy, orangey red kind of a color, gold. So whatever color might suit the house that you want to put it in. Get one for yourself, get one for your loved ones, and satisfaction is guaranteed with Skylight. And a special offer, limited time for our listeners. Get $15 off your purchase of a Skylight digital picture frame when you go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. Again, to get $15 off your purchase of a Skylight frame, just go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. That's Skylight Frame, SKYLIGHTFRAME, skylightframe.com/lockedon. Here we go, Matt. Quarterback injuries. A question from Josh, who is the Jerry Rice of question askers, who, by the way, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the leader in the Spotify minutes listened category.
Nice.
On Twitter. He's got over 8,000. He's listened to this show. Shout out to Scott, or shout out to Josh. He's listened to this show almost 6 days worth over the course of the year. Solid. Like if
more than my kids have heard
episode 1 through the end of the year, 6 days worth of listening from Josh. So love that one. And if anybody's got more than that, let us know at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL, which is, by the way,
that'd be like the best week of someone's life. Just do that straight. Just
one
after another. How great would that be?
Yeah, just go on vacation for 6 straight days. Just listen to Peacock and Williamson front to back all year long. Out of date stuff from last January,
never gets old. Yeah, all our great predictions all hit. And, we sounded brilliant, right?
Yeah, exactly. Some of those we might not want. Some of them we might look. You could put a really good highlight tape together, and probably some lowlights, right? If you're making projections for the NFL, you're going to be wrong a lot as well, because this league is chaotic and wild, and especially talking about we wouldn't have been talking about Jake Browning and CJ Beathard, right? 6 months ago, but we are right. And that leads me to the question from Josh, who says, does moving to a pass-heavy league put too much stress on quarterback bodies? And is that why we're seeing so many injuries the last 2 seasons? Do you think power run games will make a comeback to help alleviate some of that strain?
Sort of. I always go back to the same thing, and I think it gets redundant, but I stress it to no end that I just think D linemen are so much better than O linemen. And I know they are athletically. I mean, I've been using this, comparison lately. It feels like, okay, I've got to block the Niners front. Well, man, Javon Hargrave's like blocking a rhinoceros, and Joey Bosa Jr. Oh, and there's a great white shark coming off the edge. And now he's got a buddy on the other side that's like a leopard I got to block, and meanwhile, I'm just a man. I'm a big 300-pound man, but I'm not that. I'm not these insane velociraptors coming off the edge, and every team has them. So I think that's the root of it. But one thing I haven't talked about enough for that D-line over O-line thing that I think is really important that the league can address is offensive line is such a technique-driven position. Like, one of the things I'll never forget that I learned in the league, and this comes from the Ravens, and, that they believe this to no end and have had great success, that if you're tough and you're smart and you're a baseline athlete at O-line, it's really hard to get you out of the league and really hard to get you out of the lineup. I mean, that means you're technically sound, your assignment, you're tough, you play through injuries. You don't have to be a dancing bear like Orlando Pace.
Right.
But in order to get that out of somebody, they need more practice time. Like the fact everyone thinks they got a full week to practice and training camp's long, not like it used to be. I mean, buddies I know that played O-line in the 80s, they worked on technique many, many, many more hours through the course of a season or the course of a calendar year than the NFL is really allowed to now. That would be helpful.
Yeah, and you're working out. You're working on your body a lot in the off season. You might be working walk-through style on the offense and knowing where to be. And there's a lot of studying that goes on, but there's not a lot of full contact. I got to block a freak nature reps throughout a season. It takes a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there isn't. I mean, there's a shortage of O-linemen. You don't want them getting hurt. I also think this is kind of a side note. I don't know the quarterbacks. This sounds like an old man thing. I don't know the quarterbacks nowadays compared to like the 80s have as nearly as good a pocket presence, because they're always in the shotgun. They're throwing it out. Someone shows them a Mickey Mouse card in college and one read, boom. Like, I don't know that they have as good a feel for the pocket as they used to.
It's like Lawrence Taylor coming off the edge that could completely headhunt you, right? In the 1980s, How are you not more injured in those years than you are in these years when guys can barely touch you? So if there's more injuries now, and it feels like there is, it has to be a volume thing, and that's where I think Josh is onto something. The more the more times you're hit, the more likely you are to be injured, no matter what position you're playing. And it's not even about pass heavy league; it's about putting the onus on your quarterback. So you think about a running quarterback. You think about Jalen Hurts, who got knocked out of the last game against the 49ers. He's running the ball, he's throwing the ball. He dropped back. He attempted 40-something passes. And that doesn't count the times he was running. And that's when he got hurt. When you get hit, you get hurt. And I think it's a combination of those things. When you put so much on a quarterback, we've seen Justin Fields hasn't finished the season yet in his NFL career. We've seen
tons of examples.
Yeah.
Burrow's been hurt a ton. I mean,
Burrow, and he's good at getting the ball out pretty quickly. So if you drop back 50 times, you're more likely to get hurt than if you drop back 25 times. So there's absolutely a volume thing to that, and that's why running backs get hurt, because they get hit, and so you could move to a running game. And I think I think good teams are balanced. They can still run the football, and the lighter the boxes get on the defensive side of the ball, the easier it's going to be for those teams. So there's like a zig and a zag thing happening right now in the NFL that I think is important, and a lot of the best teams in the league right now are able to run the football, and just know that your running back's going to get hurt too. So you can't really put all your eggs in the star power game running back, but you can put more eggs in the running game. So I do think Josh is on something here.
A couple things I want to reiterate that you mentioned. It's not because the league isn't protecting quarterbacks. I mean, it's not like the 70s where they were getting killed, their heads taken off, dump them on their head. I mean, they're doing their best to protect them, but you can only do so much. Obviously, more games, more dropbacks, more injuries. I mean, I think that's going to happen. I mean, such is life. They just put them in harm's way more often and more running quarterbacks, to your point. But I do think that some of it's style of play too. And one thing I harped on a lot last year the 2022 season was there were bad teams like the Falcons, the Bears, the Giants that we thought, going into the last year were going to be horrible teams. But I was so big on voluminous running, like it kept those teams afloat for a while. Just run the ball like crazy. But I also think that really gives you a low ceiling. I mean, dominating a game on the ground is a great situation, but in the end, it doesn't score enough points.
We got multiple quarterback questions here and rankings and some of those things. So I want to get to the rankings question next, but real quick, season ends today. This one from Grant. Jordan Love's contract extension. What does that look like, Matt?
I'm stealing this from somebody else. I'm not a contract expert, but I think it's perfect. The Daniel Jones deal. I mean, I know our opinion of Daniel Jones has changed since he signed it. And frankly, you and I didn't condone the deal anyway. But I think that's the deal he gets, maybe plus 5%.
I like it a lot more for Love than I did for Jones. And that feels right,
too.
Which means it's going to be higher than that, I think. Especially if he keeps playing the rest of the next 5 weeks like he's played the last 5 weeks. That might get to a crazier number. So the more the Packers want to do a long-term deal, the more expensive it's going to be, because the Daniel Jones one, and then like a few weeks ago, if you asked about the Jordan Love, you'd be like, I guess he kind of got to sign a little something. So let's do something we can get out of in a couple of weeks. That might not cut it if Jordan Love continues to play this way the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think he has some say in this. Super quick before we go to break, my buddy just happened to send me this. It was a tweet from Michael Fabiano that is perfect for what we're talking about. QB matchups this week. This isn't even just talking about some bad ones out there, but this is head-to-head.
Okay.
Zappy versus Trubisky. Beathard versus Flacco. Minshew versus Browning. Mayfield versus Ritter. O'Connell versus Dobbs. Bryce Young versus Jameis Winston in a battle of first overall picks. Like, all these guys stink,
That's a rough one. Yeah, the league does not like that. The advertisers are like, man, how quickly are people going to check out of some of these games? It made for a close game on Monday Night Football, even though it was kind of ugly. So maybe
some of these guys will hit, but I mean, they're not head-to-head matchups. We're not even talking about the Vitos of the world. Yeah.
Well, that's going to make it difficult for us when we make our picks the next couple of days here on Peacock and Williamson. Next, we're ranking second-tier quarterbacks in the league. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. How easy? Well, all you do is you select 2 or more players, you pick more or less on their projected stats at PrizePicks, and you place your entry, and you hang out and potentially win up to 25 times your money. So how about that? The most fun you're going to have this fantasy season, the easiest way to play fantasy football, and turning $10 into $250 potentially at PrizePicks. And PrizePicks is the only fantasy sports platform that has injury insurance. They offer a reboot policy. If you have an injury, say in the first half, and your player doesn't come back in the second half, then that player is rebooted, and PrizePicks is the only one that has that. And a special offer for our listeners: go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, or download the app and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. All of the lines we reference here on Peacock and Williamson and the Locked On Podcast Network are where you can find those lines at FanDuel, and go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn for a special offer for our listeners. Because as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now, and utilize that extra $150 in bonus bets on NFL spreads, player props, over unders. I love building my own parlays at FanDuel. Of course, there's college football tournament games coming up. You've got Major League Baseball off-season wagers. There is draft props and NHL, NBA, you name the sport, you can find some action at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Again, that is FanDuel.com/LockedOn, FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Here we go. One more quick separate quarterback question before we start ranking them. From JDS, this is a two-parter from JDS. First of all, he talks about what the Falcons do at quarterback. Is that a draft thing? Is it a trade for Justin Fields? Where are the Falcons at quarterback for you? Right now, they're a playoff team.
Yeah. Interesting one. I think Fields is a real obvious correlation. I don't know if Coach Smith sees it this way, but I just always picture a running quarterback in that offense. Not that Tannehill was the most fleet of foot, but as much as they run, I think an athletic guy there makes sense. That's why I didn't bring up Kirk Cousins. They probably will be picking in the early 20s. I mean, I think they'll probably win their division and be one and done. Now, I've been doing a lot more draft homework, and maybe that gets you J.J. McCarthy or somebody like that. Maybe you get quarterback 4, quarterback 5, or you package up to 10 and get Jaden Daniels from LSU, who I'm quickly falling in love with and think will be a much higher pick than people realize. Or Penix in the second round or something, at least have another option. I think those make some sense. But Fields, to me, seems like a great fit. I need to see who else is going to be available. Like, boy, I'd love to see Kyler Murray there, but I think he's going to be a Cardinal,
Yeah, that's a great call. And I think there's going to be some interest in Justin Fields. And if the Bears get that number 1 pick, I think their path and their plan will be made for them. Their choice will be made for them, for the Bears, and it'll be Caleb Williams. It'll be a different quarterback and not Justin Fields. And I think, and we'll see how it goes the rest of the year. I think there'll be enough for a team to say, man, we're drafting in a place where we either got to trade up and mortgage everything in the future, and we've seen how that's gone for the Carolina Panthers, or there's still something there with Justin Fields, and it's interesting circumstances that he's even available to us, where in another case he might not be. Let's see what this looks like, and it's not super expensive, it's not prohibitive, and then we can go back in the draft later if we need to, if that doesn't work out. So that's a really interesting one, and your Steelers would be a fit there. Anywhere where you need a competition in a quarterback that's got high-end traits that you think you could utilize, especially if you want a quarterback that can run the football as well.
And I'm convinced that Atlanta doesn't have their guy. I'm 99% convinced.
Yeah.
Like they have to add something.
It's perfect, because even if you like your guy a little bit, you don't like him so much that you're going to say no to a 3rd round potential lottery ticket. Basically.
Right. And Ritter can still be on the team. You don't have to kick him out to,
Maybe he gets better, wins the job, and that's even that makes him better than he was before.
And I don't think, and it doesn't matter. It's not like Fields has any say, but I think he's from Georgia. He went to Georgia out of high school. I think that's home for him too. So.
We were asked to weigh in on this one. This one comes from Twitter, and Justice Mosqueda, who's been active on Twitter and football Twitter for NFL Twitter for a long time. He started a borderline riot, because when you start ranking quarterbacks, and I'm kind of tired of the Purdy MVP conversation, actually, because people either hate Purdy, they think he's got he's not even part of why the 49ers are good, and he's like the 6th most important person on the offense, or you think he's the MVP and he's awesome and he's dealing. And so he's one of the names on here. Rank these quarterbacks, Matt: Geno Smith, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, Tua Tagovailoa.
So I did. And my criteria was very simple. Not who do I want the rest of their career. I tried to remove the quarterback from situation as much as possible, but you certainly have to understand what are they asked to do. And by that, I don't necessarily hold it against Purdy or Tua. What they do isn't as easy as people think, to be such good timing and rhythm passers. Like, I don't think Jalen Hurts could be Purdy. And I also don't think Purdy could be Hurts, in terms of what they're asked to do. But that's coaching. You build an offense around your signal caller. So I ranked them from 1 to 8. And let's go from 8 to 1.
Okay.
I have Russell Wilson 8. And I think he's better than he's been in a Denver Bronco uniform. But I heard Mike Sando quote somebody else, so I don't know who it originally came from. But I think this is perfect. That Sean Payton is not letting Russ cook. He's letting him make snacks. He cuts up the cheese and gets out the crackers, but he's not making the encore. Yeah. He cuts up the pepperoni. They've really taken a lot off his plate. And this past game, when he had to throw and be old school Russ, he couldn't do it. So he's 8 for me. Geno is 7.
Yep. I have the same 2, 8 and 7. And look, you start talking about who's got weapons too. Like a lot of these quarterbacks have a lot of weapons. Kyler Murray's got the least amount weapons here, but he's got the least amount of results so far this year on this list as well.
And I probably will be critical of the Falcons if they don't use a day 1 or 2 pick on a quarterback. Keep Penix in the Pacific Northwest, or somebody a second round, or at least that.
Yeah.
So those are easy ones for me, and then I think it starts to get a little hairy. I'm going to put Love at 6, although I am very much a believer, but I'm only criteria is how good are you right now? So he's trending massively the right direction, but his body of work isn't Matthew Stafford's.
And he's played. So I would put Murray then Love. Love has been better.
He's my next
Murray.
one. Yeah.
If I had to have him go play a game for me right now with what Love has shown me, I like that better than what Murray has shown me recently. If I had to say, week 1 next year, then I still might go Murray, and I think it's a different conversation. But and that's kind of, this is open ended. We're talking career. We're talking right now. We're talking contracts. Who do you want on your team? Because I would want Brock Purdy. He's the cheapest quarterback out there and playing at the highest level, and you can do whatever else you want on the roster, right? But if you're just like, okay, no contract, no projection, today we're going to play a game with a quarterback. So we're pretty close. So we just have Murray and Love flipped. But I think there's here,
and they're in their own tier because basically they're incompletes to me, to be honest with you. I mean, I feel the worst about my evaluation about them because I think they're very subject to change. Like Kyler came in here last week and beat the Steelers. And so I did a ton of work from going into it. But I also thought this poor guy, he only has 3 games in a non-Kingsbury offense. He couldn't practice it. So all this offense is new to him. So he keeps getting better. But I think both those guys are a little bit of an incomplete grade. I went with Tua at 4 and felt pretty confident about that. My top 3, best to worst, I went Hurts, Stafford, Purdy. But that's tough. I mean, I really think Dak, I know he's not on the list, but of NFC quarterbacks, Dak would be my 1. And then Hurts, Stafford, Purdy are in some order 2, 3, 4. Just how good they are, not their MVP case or their contract or any of that stuff. And I'm not saying Purdy can't be 1.
Yeah,
I kind of gave the old guy a slight nudge over him in Stafford over Purdy.
Yeah, a little bit of a lifetime achievement award for Stafford, but he's playing pretty good. Hurts is not playing as good as he did last year. Hurts did not look super comfortable in the pocket and dealing. And Purdy did. There was scheme. There was, there was a lot going on in that football game with Purdy versus Hurts. So you're not going to use just that game. But any given week, one of the things I bring up is like, what do you want Purdy to do? Exactly what he's doing, but be taller while doing it. What is the thing you need Purdy to do? He's got some help, yes, he does it. But so does Geno Smith.
Hurts' sporting cast isn't bad.
Hurts has an amazing right, yeah, and so does Tua, and so I think Tua and Purdy are kind of in that zone where they're not getting enough credit for doing some highly difficult things and being accurate, knowing to go where the football, playing with timing, that if you ask some other quarterbacks to do it, that you might say, I like this quarterback more. They might struggle to do some of those things. And, they might turn the ball over more. They might not be able to get the ball out on time and perfectly accurate to the place where they need to go and throw with anticipation, some of those things. So it's sort of a pick your flavor. But that's why this, a tweet like this blows up, and it's a big argument because everyone's going to fight for their guy. But nobody has played as consistently well as Brock Purdy. So that's like kind of my argument for him. But it's a tier of those, Stafford, Tua, Purdy, Hurts, whatever. I don't care. Order them however you want.
Strawberry, chocolate, vanilla, right? Yeah,
that's the top 4 in this, and I'm not going to fight you on which guy you personally like more.
My 2 last nuggets, and we'll wrap it up. Are I think everyone knows that listens. I was hesitant to give Tua and Purdy credit coming into the year. I mean, citing the system, anyone can do that. I mean, I didn't take it that far, but I was pretty rough on the guys. Both are noticeably better than they were 365 days ago. Like, they're getting much better at their craft. They're enhancing those around them. Even if my argument was sound then that, boy, the system does more for them than the other way around, I don't know that that's true anymore. I mean, they're elevating everyone around them. But I picked Hurts being number 1 just because in the end I thought that guy's the hardest player to play against of the group.
Yeah, and he does a lot himself, especially when you consider the running part of it. So yeah, it's an interesting question, interesting conversation. They're all good quarterbacks, I think, is the answer. And
Pretty much, yeah.
I think there is a lack of giving a player credit for what they're doing from the neck up, which is the most important thing at the most important position in sports, is how good a quarterback is at making the right decisions consistently.
Make good decisions and be accurate.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if you can do those two things, you're going to make it. Yeah.
You don't get the wow. Oh, look at this throw. He did this. Nobody else can do this. Well, that's great. But can you do the consistently good thing every time that helps your team win? And so that's where Tua and Purdy right now are just playing off the charts. And they're playing in a similar system, by the way, which is helping CJ Stroud. That's so, yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. A lot of moving parts, a lot of variables. We got to get out of here. Thanks, everybody, for your questions. Apologies to those we didn't get to. Of course, Matt and I will be back tomorrow at 6-pack time. We'll be making our picks for week 14. Talk to you then right here. Peacock and Williamson.